Thank you, Beatrice. We move over now to come back into Studio 2. Livinus, how did you receive the challenge from the President of the Republic calling on youth last Sunday to dare, get in, don't be afraid, be courageous?
I think we are safe. Joe, in fact, sincerely, I did not listen to the speech.
Okay.
It was worthless for me to listen to it because to me it was like rhetorics. But when I read these speeches that were coming on in newspapers and later on,
you read the
I read the speech now in
the printed edition.
The printed edition. Mm-hmm. And this issue of the youth, I gave a question mark because we are calling on the powers that be to revise the electoral code where the youths who are disenfranchised between the ages of 18 and 20, the majority of the youths cannot cast their votes. Once they are caught in the streets without an identity card, they are either shot or they are imprisoned. So how do you therefore reconcile a youth who is disfranchised and you give that youth the same courage to go in for elections or to dare into politics where there are a lot of impediments?
Okay. From what you say, it looks to me as if the group of daring youth are those between 18 and 20. Is that?
Of course.
But there are some. But you have youths, at least those above 20, who can now get access. Because if you get to 18, you might be saying, bring it down to 16, because it's between 16 and 18 that people are more youthful, more dynamic.
I don't share with you because I'm talking about how to possess an identity card. Which age does a youth possess an identity card?
18.
And 18. Therefore, we can end there. There's nobody who will be dragging you behind that age. What we are talking about is the revision of the electoral code that would permit many youths to participate and dare into politics.
Now, I hear a couple of years ago you wanted to be member of parliament. What was your experience there?
It was, as I said, it's a bitter experience because there was a bitter experience because it was quite enriching, but the persecutions were enormous.
Before or after?
After my declaration to go into the Senate.
Who was persecuting you?
The ruling party members that asked me a funny question. Who is your godfather? I said John Mubune Kale. They said they are not talking about your godfather in church. They are talking about godfatherism in politics. And it became, it puzzled me, and I was forced to declare my candidature with People's Action Party, PAP, because the watertight system are people who are a bit myopic in the way they are looking at the Kupe Manunguba region. The way they are looking at pluralism in politics is not the same way that pluralism is all over the world. So everybody must be in the bandwagon. And since I did not produce a godfather, I had now to jump into an opposition party where my aspirations may be gotten. I may express my views. There again, there were a lot of obstacles. Financially, there is this culture of poverty that had been instituted to our youths. The youth don't have jobs, and to come up with the caution fee was a problem. The administration is not helping us because by the time I was writing my making documents for non-convention resident permit, they asked me a bottle of whiskey and all of that I could not produce before my papers could come out.
Okay. Apparently, Livinus, your case is a special one.
Yes.
We will look into it. Okay, that sounds quite interesting. When you listen to him, Christian, and you hear him speak, and you have reporters that cover these elections all across the country, how do you react when you hear him speak?
You know, I think he's just painted a veritable picture of what politics in Cameroon is all about. you must have a godfather somewhere, a very powerful one for that matter, not a church godfather as he said. I mean, you must be able to do 1 or 2 dirty jobs for some big man somewhere to be able to position as his successor. It is difficult. Like he said, I actually followed the head of state speech, but at some point I was asking myself whether he was addressing the youth of another country or the youth of this country. Because first of all, you render people financially weakened, politically powerless, and you're asking them to take over from. I mean, look at our Senate.
He said they should dare. Now,
excuse me, Joe. Let me talk now. You asked a question, right?
Okay. Land because I wanted to take you to
don't more realistic. I will take you there, Joe. This is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Joe, look at our Senate, right?
Yes.
You see who is there at the helm of the Senate. Kabaye was parliamentarian when my mother was not yet married. He's still president of he's still a parliamentarian today. And then there is only one person keeping him there. And it's the same person who is challenging the youth today. I mean, you can find.
Okay, have you landed?
I've landed.
Okay, let me ask you my own question now. Yeah. When you look at the last election presidential poll, you see the number of youth first who became candidates, and those who came out in rallies. Does that not inspire you? Because one thing is getting involved, and the other one is getting the voters' card. Because many of them don't get the voters' card and troop in for rallies and without the arm.
Joe, you are very correct. You are very correct. I think we have a problem in this country. You know, it is not only on the side of the government or the powers that be. But again, you can also blame the powers that be, because many people have registered and the names don't come out. And sometimes the people don't believe in the electoral system, in our electoral system. And so many people get discouraged. Not even people say, I often hear people say, why should I waste my time registering when I will not have my card, or I'll register in Obili and my name comes out in Adolezua, or for instance, I will vote and my vote will not be taken into consideration.
No, that used to be before the computerization of electoral registers, right?
No,
it's still there?
It is very much there, Joe.
I hope that the LECAM is listening to what you're saying, and that they would, in the next couple of days, prove you not correct in what you're saying. Now, they are talking about bitter experiences in terms of getting involved, and the challenge now is that we need to have youths to get into politics so as to take up the relay baton from the older people who will be faced out by the normal natural selection.
I mean, what you say is every country thinks about how to prepare the relay. These people are not going to be there forever, and so by some means or the other, there's going to be a time when young people get involved. The problem is that we have conceived the participation of young people as replacing an older generation. We look at our society as the older people occupying these big positions, and young people prepare themselves so that when they get to that age, they can occupy those positions. The real issue should be that we should have young people in parliament now. We should have young people in government now. We should have young people in business doing the things. If you take about the average age of Cameroon, it's under 35, which means that the vast majority of the people who own this country are below the age of 35. They should be in the business of running this country at this age. It's not a question of daring now so that you replace the older generation.
Now, when you say what you say, it pushes me to asking this question. Levinus was talking there about giving those between 18 and 20 the right to possess a voter's card and vote. Now, you talk about the hope or the daring attitude in business, in politics, and thus, and we see some of the youth emerging.
Oh, yes.
One thing about politics is that you don't, I was listening to a politician from one neighboring country, you don't hand over power as such. people compete for that. And if you look at the new government, maybe the proportion might not what the younger people want, but you have younger people into government, into other state structures. But maybe the proportion might not be what you want. But the challenge which the president was talking about is that be more involved.
No, you're very right. And I mean, the point I think he wanted to make was that you cannot ask people to get involved and you don't create the space for them to get involved. And the point he raised, which was kind of trivialized, if I understood your reactions quite well, is a very serious point in that adulthood in Cameroon is defined differently in different sets of laws. He takes the example of the national identity card. It's 18 years old, but when it comes to political participation, it's 20 years or 21 years old. 20. You can only vote at 20. That's already a problem. That's a fraction of the population that has been kept out of the political process. You take other aspects of society, ownership of property, for example, when it comes to land, for example, which is a huge resource. Remember that most of the poorest people in this country, the only resource they have is land. And young people can't have access to that land, use that land to be able to raise capital, to do business, because the age at which you can own land in Cameroon is very, very disadvantaged to young people. You have to get to, I think, 40. I was even thinking I was 40. I was speaking with somebody only a couple of days, no, it's even 50 now. So those are the problems. You have to create the space for young people to be able to emerge.
Okay. Doctor, when you listen to them speak as somebody in charge of human rights, do you see a problem somewhere?
They are raising a very important problem about voting age. The commission has for over 10 years been hammering on the change of the voting age. Okay. Because we even presented studies which show that out of more than 200 electoral systems in the world, you had less than 25 with the voting age below, above 18. Okay. And that Cameroon happened to feed itself among the few countries in the world with the voting age above 18. And so we've been asking that this will be allowed, because he talked about other things. We've cited joining the public service, serving in the army, being in the university. At that age, you're already in the university. Why should they refuse you from voting? Okay. And if they are kept away in the army, tell me how they can participate even in trying to elect other youths who might be older than them, if they are not allowed to vote. And we are talking about youths between that age and 35, right? Yes. Who should actively be involved in politics. But if you eliminate so many of them who would normally be inclined to voting younger persons, then you are already disadvantaging them.
Okay. Livinus, when they say learn from the older people, does that not inspire you?
Yeah, you learn, learning is a permanent change in behavior. What lesson am I learning to the older persons? That is where the question is. If you inculcate a culture where corruption, mismanagement of public funds, is that what I'm going to learn from the older generation? When I get into politics, they showed there was every indication that if you are not like the issue of a bottle of whiskey, I did not corrupt my way, my non-conviction nor resident permit will be signed. So before lending to somebody, Abel Bandura states that a child learns by imitation. We should learn good habits from our parents. Once you do that, you will be able to transfer the younger generation into posterity, and at the same time they will inculcate good habits. But the situation that we have now is not worth learning. That's why I decided to pipe low into politics. I went into civil society activism. Doctor raised a point on the civil servant. Most of our politicians, in quote, they feel that they are politicians. They are not politicians. They are public civil servants that are co-opted into politics. And if a government is formed without taking into cognizance the public, the people from the public service, the private sector, the civil society, and any other like the visually or the impaired persons, therefore
those living with
disabilities. Therefore, you realize that what the older generation that are sitting tight on the same spot are doing is not worth learning.
Okay, which means you have backed out of politics.
I've piped low because I've not officially resigned from my political party, but I'm involved in civil society activism.
Oh, you've decided to go to pipe low, as you say. Now, many elderly people feel that the youths are reckless and that they need to be educated more. And this can be seen in today's society, where there's a lot of the people are decrying drug abuse, cyber criminality, and all. They are smarter in wrongdoings than in doing things which are right.
Joe, I think sometimes when you have a child in the house who becomes a thief at a certain age, the blame sometimes can be on the father. Some of these things you are naming here, the elderly people who want to sit tight, who don't want to give space to the younger generation, you force some of these youth into some of these areas.
By doing what?
You don't give them the opportunity to emerge, and so they try to look for other means to survive, Joe. It's a fact.
By taking drugs?
I am saying that it is not every youth who is taking drugs or doing whatever crime.
The problem is that
the majority of the youth are frustrated, and they know that if I'm looking up to Cavalier to lead parliament so that I get there from his constituency,
is that the only post
excuse me, Joe,
you have to get into?
No, excuse me.
Is that the only post?
No, but for a man, no, Joe, for a man who has been in parliament since 1970, excuse me, Joe.
You're exaggerating.
I'm not exaggerating. Let's excuse me. He comes from the constituency he comes from. It means that from 1970.
No,
excuse me, Joe. I don't have a particular problem. It is the system. There is no parliamentarian who takes a decision to rerun or to be re-elected without having clearance from up there. And sometimes you have to tell him that, look, you've done your time from 1970 to 2019, and I bet you he will still be candidate next year. Which means that from his area from 1970 to 2025, nobody is qualified to be parliamentarian. And then what do you expect the youth from that area to do? To sit and watch him take all his time in parliament? And so that's why I said sometimes we also have to blame ourselves.
I wanted to allow you to speak so that you shouldn't say I cut you.
No, you did not, but I'm telling you that, Joe, our youth sometimes they get involved in some of these crimes because we force them and they get frustrated, you know, and they have to look for a way to survive too.
Yeah, now, you make people believe that the only job is that of a parliamentarian.
We are talking about youth and politics, right?
Yes, no. Let me be clear. If all of the 180 members of parliament were youth, would that solve the problems in the country? How many of them?
Joe, it could solve, because let me explain. Sometimes, I don't know if you've had time to cover the Senate. A majority, if not all of them, spend time sleeping during business hours. What decisions do you expect them to take?
No, that's what you think.
I've been there, Joe.
That's what you think. No, sometimes you are exaggerated in the way you make your comments. Eugene, the way he speaks gives one the impression that even though the president said there, it looks like the way out is in politics. Meanwhile, a good living will be, it's more of improving the private sector than getting into politics.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people have advocated over the years, that this need for this mindset shift within the Cameroonian youth. The whole concept that you can only make a career in the public service or in politics. But the interesting thing is that that's changing very rapidly. You pointed out quite well. The problem is these young people are not being seen, whether it's in the arts, in new technology, except that they're not given the space to bring that expertise and that knowledge and to help their community become better communities for everyone.
I like to hear that, and maybe that's the opportunity which the president was talking about when he said get involved so that you can be actors and not just followers. Now, how would you advise the youth to be cautious but accept them into politics as an elderly person?
Let me start by indicating that we are certainly pleased with the fact that the head of state is creating opportunities for youth now. That's consistent with recommendations that we've been making to him, that we have to put in place a more inclusive society where the youth and the women are not marginalized. In our reports we read, our reports we see that we emphasize on that. And you know that politics influence
almost everything.
Almost everything. So the earlier, the more the youth get involved in defining politics in parliament, because parliament is only composed of people of a certain age whose aim may be to protect themselves and stay in political life for long. Then they used to be down there suffering. They will have no opportunity to contribute towards adopting such policies that can enhance progress.
Okay. All right. I would like us to hang our boots here in terms of youth and politics and move on to the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest. And we have the speaker from Kange, Williams Kwasaloko. He was in Kumba with the governor of the Southwest region to do an assessment of what the damage that was caused at the district hospital last weekend. His report.
These are images captured courtesy by an amateur camera showing the Kumba District Hospital set ablaze by separatist fighters in the early hours of February 11. As a prompt reaction, Southwest Governor Bernard Okalia Bilai braved the dangerous stretch of road from Boya to Kumba to see for himself the damage caused on the edifice. On arrival in Kumba, Governor Bilai and his entourage was amazed at the ugly side of what used to be the well-equipped district hospital. According to the director of the Kumba District Hospital, Dr. Mrs. Nve Sandrine, the separatists launched their attack at about 1 a.m. February 11, setting the hospital ablaze. The casualties were enormous. The Central Operating Unit, the male and female surgical wards, the VIP ward were all consumed by fire. 2 patients were found dead in the rubble. The separatists also burned down 3 residences of the hospital staff, as well as vehicles belonging to the personnel of the hospital. In a crisis meeting grouping officials of the hospital and administrative officials of Meme Division, Governor Bilai revealed government's determination to keep the terrorists at bay. Governor Bilai later visited the patients transferred to other medical facilities in Kumba. The Southwest Chief Executive rounded up his visit to the military camp of the Rapid Intervention Battalion, where he comforted soldiers wounded on the battlefront. This is the remains of what used to be as the operating theater room of the Kumba District Hospital, a hospital built more than 50 years ago and today raged by fire. This hospital, we are told, was a referral point for patients in Kumba District as well as the whole of Meme Division. The question is, where would the thousands of patients go to? Is this what the Anglophone crisis is all about? Kange Williams Wasaroko, CRTV News, Kumba.
Thank you, Williams. Doctor, what was the reaction of the National Commission on Human Rights and Freedom when you saw these pictures?
Joe, let me start by indicating, I'm just reminding you of the composition and the role of the National Commission on Human Rights and Freedoms. You know that the commission has people coming from various backgrounds. You have senior senators who sit on the commission, senior deputies of the National Assembly who sit there. You have high-ranking Supreme Court judges. You have the Bar Council. You have representatives of syndicates. You have top-ranking law professors of universities, and you have the 30 people coming from various backgrounds expected to be, by the law which says them, or to be people of integrity. That means when a situation like that occurs, they have to speak responsibly, of course. And these people are in their various occupations. I'm the permanent person there on the spot. When it happens, I need some time to pull them together so that we agree on what to say, because we have to say just anything. Well, we agreed that it was necessary, of course, to condemn that act. It was such an atrocity that had to be condemned in the strongest terms, and we did that.
Okay.
And we also expected that the perpetrators should be arrested and tried and punished accordingly. But that's asking that there should be proper investigation to know the people who did it. And we regretted that it ever happened, because we presumed that places like those should always have security, especially during the crisis.
In a crisis situation?
Yeah, they could not leave that place without security. And it's regrettable that nobody was caught on the spot to be shown to the public.
What the law people call Exhibit A.
Well, to show as exhibit. So it is, at the level of commission, very difficult for us to start ascertaining responsibilities. Because when it happens like that, what you receive is accusations and counter-accusations. And when you ask for investigation, you never get the truth coming out.
Now, you have regional offices. You don't have the resources to be able to carry out independent investigations yourself?
Joe, you must be realistic about what you're saying. Let us not hide. And I use this opportunity to emphasize a point that I had already made before. We produce a statement after the arson at the Kumba District Hospital. That statement was read in its entirety by other news organs. But the editorial policy of CRTV made them to just limit themselves to three points. They never wanted to read those sections that concern our calling, asking that our state should be more accountable. Because there's no way for us to understand that a thing will happen like that, and with all the security that's over there, the perpetrators will not be got. And the point I want to make is this, that we have field services, but those field services cannot operate. Face the reality. It is difficult to circulate and carry out investigations there. If a minister of armed forces would find it difficult to walk around in the northwest or southwest, and if the governor, heavily protected, will find it difficult to walk, and if the people are threatening that they don't want to see you circulating with CA cars, we recently bought vehicles which could have enabled my field staff to be able to move around. But you know that in the northwest and southwest, we should not be deceiving people. It is difficult to move around and carry out any investigation. Okay. So the situation has become such that we need to think seriously. And coming back again to the attack at the hospital, where many patients were killed, were burnt, and hospital facilities destroyed, so the patient will not know where to go. We are asking ourselves the question: our humanity has been placed on a very high question mark. Are we still human beings, or why are we behaving worse than animals? And when it happens, how is it that we cannot lay hands on the perpetrators?
No,
this has happened over and over, please, Joe.
Yes.
Over and over it has happened. Whether it was Sacred Heart College, was PSS Mancon, was when we asked that it should carry out research and tell us and reveal the real perpetrators, the results are not known.
But you're talking about a situation in a conflict area, which it's difficult, as you put
yes.
it, to be able to carry out a normal investigation as you would have wanted, because you would have been part of the investigation. And so when you talk about a conflict situation, you must also talk about the realities on the ground, isn't it? Now, the point, I know that sometime I received you on this program and we talked about the situation in the Far North region, and you talked about how your commission was working on the ground, in the field, to be able to help bring about appeasement and to change mentalities. Hasn't it been possible for you to do same in the Northwest and Southwest, or because of the situation on the ground?
The two situations are totally different.
Okay.
Up in the Far North, you had the whole of Cameroon united to fight against a foreign invasion. You had young people from the Southwest and Northwest who went into the army and were fighting. You had contribution of money from throughout the 10 regions of the country, because we were fighting against a foreign invasion. Now, you are dealing with a civil war now. It's very difficult to proceed with it. And that is why when we saw this case...
You call it a civil war?
Yes. It's a civil war. I've heard some people trying to dispute. The war since the end of November 2017. What war is it? Governors have talked about military confrontations. In their addresses to the public, they have talked about military confrontations in many places. Where do you talk about military confrontation where there's no warfare? You have a civil war going where our security forces are using arms to fight against armed groups composed essentially of Cameroonian citizens. That is a civil war. The country is at war with itself. We cannot deny the fact that the country is facing what I call a very devastating civil war.
Okay, from what you say, it's as if you have been limited to Yaoundé. You have become powerless to act or to appeal, even to write through newspapers or speak through the media, bring words of appeasement to the people who are involved.
I have been writing, and I've been giving press statements. But what I'm saying with emphasis is that I have noticed that even though when I invite for a press statement and invite journalists, the leading number of journalists that I invite are CRTV journalists. But when they come and go, they do partial reporting. This is not the first time that I'm complaining about it. But other journalists of other private media organs, they really release all of what we write. What the commission write. When I say I speak always in the name of the commission. We are a collegial institution which plays the role of advice to the state, and the law also gives us the role to mediate. We have been seeking to mediate. It has not been possible because we cannot force ourselves to mediate. By the way, the resources are not there. If you take a look at the state budget, you see that in order to reduce activism of the commission, it is the least of the state institutions in the state budget. You take a look at that, you see it for yourself. But we do our best to educate people, to educate the population. And when we see things happening like this, we ask ourselves, where did we go wrong? We educated people to know how to express themselves, either in public manifestations, and we also educated the armed forces to know how to conduct public order, to ensure public order. This is in the program, national program for the teaching of human rights, which is used at all the levels of our education: primary school, secondary school, military schools, other professional schools. When you go there, you will see that the program which we developed is being used. How is it that people can know about human rights and they will be violating human rights the way they are violating now?
Okay.
With impunity.
From the way the president of the National Commission on Human Rights is speaking, it seems they have become handicapped somehow in trying to push through their policies and trying to help out in the situation. And
a quick addition to that.
Yes.
You are aware with issued statements that even to carry out the to do our work in keeping with the provisions of the law, we have been obstructed. And when the public officials were obstructing, they knew that we were violating the law. We are supposed to visit detention places to see how suspects are treated.
Have you written to?
We have written
that in your report.
Sure, we have. You just need to read more.
Okay. I'm sure they are aware now of what is happening.
Even the current situation with the recent arrest in connection with the public manifestation, we have been finding it difficult to penetrate.
Okay. Apparently, the measures which are being taken are not yielding the desired results, and we find still incidents popping up here and there. What type of language should be used so that those who are in conflict, especially the separatists, can listen to?
You're asking me a question that disempowers me, because I don't know. That's the simple answer. The problem we have, even before we got to where, is that there's a serious breakdown in trust between the public and the authorities. The last time we were here, I said that there needs to be a renegotiation of the social contract between the people of the ruling class and the masses. And it's evident in everyday thing that you see. When, for example, investigations are not conducted, when there are indications of human rights violations, when we hear language that gives the impression that there's a lack of understanding of exactly what's going on, it becomes difficult to think that you could resolve this problem with language, with wordings, with, I don't know how you want to call it. There needs to be a renegotiation of the social contract.
Okay.
What kind of country do we want to build?
When you say the language, because it's this same language that builds, and you use the same language to destroy, to break down.
Don't get me wrong. Again, I know the power of language. I know the influence that even the media can have on the mentality and the mindset of the public, whether it's the news reports, including some that we've heard during this program. We know the implications of those things on the ground. What I'm saying is that in as much as we want to reduce the amount and the frequency of provocative, uncalled for language, whether in the media or in the public discourse of officials, the problem is way beyond that. There is need now to rethink completely what kind of country. I am trying to emphasize the relationship between
the governed and the
governed and the governed, the governing and the governed.
Yeah.
That breakdown needs to be repaired. If you don't address that, whatever you do else wouldn't hold for a long time.
Okay. And you just talked that, you see, one of the things which let me go straight to it, the National Communication Council raised was the increase in rhetoric on that in the media of late. And this, as a publisher, because the president was talking there about CRTV not saying all of what CRTV has a right to its editorial policy, and CRTV does just what is supposed to be done. And as one of the leading private newspapers in the country, this aspect of rhetoric, and which is being promoted by some media organs, which the National Communication Council decried, it's a serious issue that has to be looked into.
Correct, Joe. But again, you just said, I'll start by talking about their own house, CRTV. I think you people run most of the provocative news items.
That's
like
what
the one
you
we
think.
just followed on the Kumba incident.
That's what you think.
No, yes. It is a fact, Joe. It is sometimes not correct for a journalist to give, to take a stand on an incident like the one that happened in Kumba. Investigations are still going on, and the journalist on state media is already accusing one party. You only help to radicalize, and you give people names.
No, he was quoting. Right.
He didn't quote Joe. He was direct in his report. Follow the report, Joe.
Okay.
let me.
Now,
and then Joe, I think you asked a question here. I think I've answered your question. Again, you are talking about CRTV.
I asked you,
Joe,
not
please,
CRTV.
I'm answering a question.
I said your
The Guardian
paper.
Post, where I work for, which I work for, is not the only media organ in Cameroon. If I answer a question, I must answer for other media organs that are not represented here.
No, you are not talking about...
No, Joe, excuse me, please.
On their behalf, you are talking about your own paper.
It cannot be me. I talk for journalists in this country.
No.
On this program.
No, you don't talk for every journalist.
No, I'm talking, Joe, you talk about CRTV and editorial policy.
No,
and I
didn't ask you about CRTV. I was asking about your paper.
We are very cautious in the manner in which we report. But again, I wanted to say that CRTV cannot place editorial policy above the problems in the Northwest and Southwest. Doctor is just complaining here about communiques which they ship to CRTV and read only portions of the communiques. Now, is that the editorial policy of a media organ that is run by the taxpayers' money, Joe?
You say what you say because you have your own editorial policy.
I cannot place the editorial policy of the Guardian Post against against national interests like you would do.
That's just what CRTV does.
Let me just say something.
Yes, before I go to Levinas.
Before you move on, and I have had this discussion about editorial policies over and over. There is no editorial policy that undermines the basic principles of journalism, which is truth, accuracy, fairness in reporting. That has nothing to do with an editorial policy. Your editorial policy it's more of the philosophy of the house, but the day-to-day work of the journalist doesn't change with editorial policy.
That's quite right.
And that's the problem with the reporting that we see.
Now, if CRTV had that problem and the others were fair,
they still have.
I don't say the others are fair. I'm talking about the media generally.
Now, what's
Joe,
your take?
You didn't permit me to say the last
you have landed. What's the last thing you want to say?
Joe, you were asking about...
about your own, not...
yes, but again, before, you may not come back to me, but I want to say something on this crisis, Joe.
No, I'll always come back to you.
Okay.
Yes. When you look at what is happening, and like somebody who wanted to dabble into politics, and how do you appeal to consciences?
How do we appeal to consciences when the truth is not told? We must put the cards on the table. We speak the truth. I was flabbergasted hearing a report apportioning blame. In this crisis, we have three parties, opportunities. People who are created by certain groups of people to perpetrate atrocities. There is the Republican forces, and you have the freedom fighters.
You call them freedom fighters?
They are freedom fighters. They are looking for independence. That's what they told us.
That's what they told you?
Yes.
That sounds quite devastating.
I don't want to judge them.
A politician like you.
I don't want to judge them, but they prefer the name freedom fighters than terrorists. Terrorism, they don't negotiate with terrorists, and that's why
we are not negotiating with them.
That's why we are still where we are, because I said this crisis is a problem of people trying to maintain intransigent positions.
Okay, and
I wanted to make a point on this thing.
No, the president has already made a statement on that. Let's go to Teke. We have just a few minutes.
Yes, Joe, very many reactions, but we're going to take just a few. We begin with Prince Mutapena Obese Mudika, who said the leaders of tomorrow are already alive today, but how well these youth are informed and empowered would help them to be real actors, and therefore these youth should be given a chance by the old at the corridors of power and who see themselves as youth at the age of 80 or more. And on the Anglophone crisis, we should stop putting the cart before the horse. And where on earth have we had disarmament takes place without consent of various parties? And for Eugene says the Anglophone crisis can only be arrested if the president and ministers, especially those from Anglophone extraction, are sincere and put ego aside and face the crisis and not the shadow. And then we go to Kila Mary, who says, for youths to be real actors, only one thing and not two. Give enough retirement to the old and limit the age of working in Cameroon so that any person should have 5 years, during the last 5 years of retirement, to have a preparation program to go on retirement. And we'll conclude with Sue Blessed here, who says for those youths to be real actors, they have to believe in themselves, and this can be much effective if they are well empowered and given the chance by the old folks to show their expertise and take advantage of the information superhighway.
Okay, just one observation. How can your commission, your commission, how do you appeal to those people to be more realistic, to be more humane in what they are doing, and to lay down their arms?
The appeal that we've made repeatedly is to avoid violence and to seek to settle the disagreement through dialogue, peaceful and inclusive dialogue. So, but in this connection, I want using this opportunity I want you to note that the Commission made recent proposals to the head of state, believing that we cannot even start negotiating a situation of coming back to a state of normalcy without a ceasefire. It's 30 members of the Commission reflecting and feeling strongly that time has come to halt the devastating war that is going on. So we call, as the head of state, to call for a ceasefire, and then to create a framework for bringing out the truth, and then promoting reconciliation, and which will allow us to move towards reconstruction. We have to reconstruct. You know that businesses have been closed down. So many youths have been laid off. The youths that were creating jobs for them, but the ongoing war is leading to layoff. So many of them are missing their employment, current employment.
And education as well.
Education as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we can't go. Our time is up, so we will have time to talk about that some other time. So thank you very much for being with us on the program this Sunday. We will be looking forward to being with you again same time next week. Tam Tam Weekend is coming right ahead. Stay with us if you can. Good day.